In less than a month, Australia will implement one of the world's most ambitious pieces of digital legislation, a complete social media ban for anyone under 16 years old. No Instagram, no TikTok, no Snapchat, not for kids, not for teens. A full stop on social media until you turn 16. The reaction has been mixed. To put it mildly, parents are divided, tech companies are scrambling, and young people themselves, well, they're caught in the middle of what might be the biggest social experiment in digital parenting we'd ever seen. But here's the thing, this isn't just about keeping kids off their phones. This is about cognitive development, about the way adolescent brains process risks, about perpetrators who are always one step ahead of both parents and police. It's about a generation growing up in a world where the lines between online and offline harm has completely dissolved. The numbers paint a stark picture. 80% of Australian children from age 8 have access to mobile device. Rates of cyberbullying, sextortions, and online grooming continue to climb. And meanwhile, these kids are developing their identities, their critical thinking skill, their understanding who they are, all while navigating platforms designed to be addictive, not protective. Today, we're speaking with Associate Professor Leslie Ann A. from UniSA Education Futures. She spent years researching child development, online safety, and intersection of digital technology and adolescents' well-being. And she's going to help us understand what this ban actually means, not just what the policy says, but what the science tell us about keeping young people safe online. So the question becomes, is this ban protection or is it just pushing risks somewhere else? Let's find out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Part 8A under redmancarry.com. On today's episode, we're talking to Associate Professor Leslie Ann A. She is the UniSA Education Futures. We're talking about this. Um, this is almost a month now before this social media ban under 16 will be implemented. So we have to have bit of understanding what's really happening about this. So please welcome to the show, Associate Professor Leslie Ann A. How are you today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
First thing question I have for you, Professor, is what potential benefits do policymakers see in banning social media for under 16? And how do this align with evidence from, say, child development research?
Okay, so while the internet provides like great opportunity for obtaining new knowledge, keeping up with local or national or international affairs, and supporting children's learning and homework, etc., their connection, their entertainment, it's also a platform that brings many risks. So, things like cyberbullying, sextortion, child sexual abuse, and inappropriate material such as how to make bombs or pornography or hate speech. But social media has not only been associated with all those things, but it also has been associated with false information, shaping people's perceptions, negative representation, perpetuating negative stereotypes and stigma, frightful information, conspiracy theories, social comparison, um, sexualized body image dysphoria, eating disorders, addiction, depression, and suicidal ideation. So there's lots and lots of things here that place kids at risk. Children, like sexually, children's hormones and physical sexual development means that they're still developing, and it hits its peak at around about age 10 to 17. So and it's average about 12 to 15 years of age, children developing sexually. So they're also developing their identity formation. Cognitively, they're still developing their executive functioning skills and their critical thinking. So while they're actively being taught how to critically think in schools through formal schooling, it's largely linked to problem solving or, academic problems. So, they're all the things that are happening within children's bodies and their brains, under the age of 16. So they're not necessarily taught to think about scammers or ill-intentioned people such as child sexual abuse perpetrators. And child sexual abuse perpetrators are smart and they're always a step ahead of even police. So we need to sort of try to teach their strategies to kids and parents to help children protect themselves. So basically, the reason that we are, policy makers are banning social media for under 16-year-olds is because they're not cognitively developed enough and to be able to critically think and necessarily be able to identify all those risks that the internet brings with it and social media brings with it. And perpetrators are always looking for, new ways to access and connect with kids, and they're doing that secretively and they're tricking kids. And police are finding it difficult to identify and trap perpetrators. So how can we expect children to be able to recognise them? So keeping kids off social media platforms is a protective mechanism, and just for a few more years until their bodies and their minds are developed enough to be able to critically analyse and identify some of these things. So we also need, that time to have a better opportunity to be able to educate them so that, they can critically think about what they're seeing and be able to protect themselves, identify and, protect themselves and also report. So it's a bit like, we don't let kids drive until they're 16, and that's to protect them. Keeping them off social media until they're 16 is another way to try and protect them.
So, from your perspective, could a ban effectively reduce the risk of exposure to harmful sexualized content, or might it just shift those risks elsewhere?
Look, any reduction in time spent on media platforms that carry risk is better than nothing. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to stop the risk, but it can lessen the opportunity for exposure to inappropriate media, online bullying, hate speech, etc. Online gaming still enables these risks, so education is key. So for parents, educate yourself on social media platforms and internet safety as a whole, then educate your kids. Keep up to date with what's happening on social media and some of the risks that occur in social media. And that can be done just by, the eSafety Commissioner website. They have a lot of materials there, and a lot of warnings about what's happening on social media and a lot of educational materials on how to protect kids on social media. Talk to your kids, be open about the reason we have social media ban, discuss the risks that the nation are trying to protect them from, such as your bullying, your sextortion, sadistic sextortion and hate speech. Invite conversation from your kids, be approachable and reassure them that no matter what they do or what has happened, together you can address it, because too often kids find themselves in trouble. They might be getting groomed by a perpetrator. They may have sent sexualized images, and then that perpetrator uses that to control them, basically. And they're too scared. They know that they've done something wrong. They know they've done something silly, and they're too scared to actually reach out until their parents fear, they might fear getting in trouble. They might fear, the consequences. So too often they don't reach out to parents or authorities, and if it gets too much, they then end up, taking their own lives. So it's really important for parents to make sure that their kids know that no matter what happens, no problem is too big for you to be able to work through it together and fix that problem. I think schools also have a responsibility to educate kids about the functioning of the internet and appropriate internet use, critical media literacy, recognizing false information, and we've got this whole new issues now with AI. So, schools are in a position to be able to teach kids about that. They're also in a position to be able to help them to, teach them about recognizing and responding to risks and help seeking. But there's still many ways that kids can connect with peers. So even though there is a social media ban, there's still many apps, information, entertainment that they can engage with, and there's still the good old-fashioned, connecting with their peers through group text or face-to-face.
Mhm. So you mostly talking about education and young people rights to participate. How should the policymaker balance the child protection with young people's right to participation and digital literacy development?
Whilst children have a right to participate in media and a right to obtain knowledge and engage in entertainment, they also have a right, and we have a responsibility to protect them. So media engagement needs to be balanced between a healthy media diet. So that's the time and frequency spent on devices and access to healthy and helpful material, but also privacy. So policymakers need to guide and monitor the implementation of the ban. They need to oversee how social media platforms are rolling out and managing the ban, and how they're implementing the removal of social media accounts for young people under the age of 16. So this needs to be monitored closely, and platforms that are not complying need to be held accountable. So we know that children are not going to be held accountable for, if they do have social media platforms. It is the role and responsibility of the platforms themselves to make sure that they're monitoring that. And, there needs to be some, hefty fines in there if they are not complying with that media ban. Policy around AI needs to be transparent, so that that can support people, all people, not only children, around scammers and fake images, which can support digital literacy development. So while we have digital literacy education and critical media literacy, bullying education, etc., at schools, we aren't actually monitoring or testing. We're not monitoring how schools are rolling this out, how often they're teaching this, what they're teaching about that, and we're not testing kids on their knowledge either. So, unlike maths and English and science, we are monitoring what is being taught, and we are testing kids on their knowledge, and we're not doing that in the spaces of digital literacy. So I think monitoring and testing this could make teachers more accountable for teaching this content, and also test student knowledge, because it's important that kids understand, this information, but we're not actually testing them on it. But in saying that, the pressure for STEM, so science, technology, English, and maths, impacts what teachers teach. So teachers are under so much pressure to make sure that kids are understanding, science, technology, English, and maths, that takes up a lot of the focus in schools, and things like social media education, critical literacy education, and education on how to use media effectively is being sort of like pushed aside, and we're not giving it the importance that we need to give it. Additionally, we need to supplement. We need like supplementary activities. So we're removing something from kids. We're removing their ability to engage with social media. So, government needs to, really should promote and fund other forms of safe interaction engagement. So we may need to bring back the good old-fashioned skating rinks that used to be around in the, 80s, and, social cricket or tennis at no or limited cost to the child consumer. So if we're going to be removing something, what are we going to put in place to be able to keep kids connected and make it a more attractive transition for them?
In connection with that transition that you're talking about, In your experience, what age should children begin structured education around social media literacy, and what form should that take?
I think social media literacy should really begin the minute children start engaging with media, including text and emails. So, we're putting devices into our children's hands at, 3, 4 years of age. So if we're putting devices in their hands, they need to be taught how to use those devices and the risks in relation to those devices. So this should be a collaborative approach. So it's a parent responsibility, it's a teacher responsibility, and it's like any protective adult should also engage in teaching kids how to use digital media. So we need to teach them about privacy. We need to teach them about digital etiquette, so how to actually communicate with each other, so to prevent kids from bullying each other online. We need to teach them about the power of the internet. So as a device or as a technology, the internet is impossible to control. Once something's put up there, once something is shared or sent, you've lost control of it, and that's something that kids need to know. Very early on. We need to teach them about AI. We need to teach them about internet risks and social media risks. We need to teach them about the appropriate use of the internet. We need to teach them about help seeking if they do get in trouble or they feel uncomfortable. If something doesn't feel right, they need to report that. They need to seek help from parents or teachers or authorities. And we need to, teach them about critical media literacy as well. So the list is endless in relation to what we need to teach them. And we need to teach them in an age appropriate way. So from, very young age, we need to teach kids, that, they need to engage in media in the same way that they would engage face to face. You wouldn't be nasty to someone's face. You wouldn't say something rude or mean to someone's face. So why would you do it on the internet? So we need to be teaching them that from a very early age in a way that they understand all of these things, basically as soon as they start engaging with media.
Mhm. This could banning social media delay exposure to grooming and sexualized content, or it does it simply postpone when children encounter it?
I think banning social media is going to lessen the risks, but like I said before, perpetrators are smart. They're going to find new ways to try and access kids because their goal is to try and access kids to harm them, basically. Um, so banning social media isn't going to be the silver bullets, but it is going to, if it's going to lessen the risk because there's less interactions that they're going to be having through multiple forms of social media. There's still risks relative to gaming. Children are still going to be on the internet. So when children are engaging on the internet, there are always means and ways to be able to access them. So perpetrators will shift platforms to try to access children. But it's about, educating kids around, not speaking to strangers on the internet. If somebody says or does something that makes you feel uncomfortable, to report to their parents or report to teachers or report to another protective adult, so that even if it's something that they feel uncomfortable or suspicious about, they need to be educated to report that straight away. And then that way adults can advise kids on how to respond to that.
Um, is there any evidence based intervention intervention for teaching healthy online boundaries in younger children before they reach adolescence?
I think all we can, I don't think there is any research evidence at this point. However, what we do know in relation to children's cognitive development, that they are risk takers, particularly in their teen years. They don't, while they're still developing, their executive functions and their critical thinking, they may not actually recognise some of the risks that are out there, and they may not know how to respond to those. So I think whilst children are developing and maturing, cognitively and physically, that it's important that we do what we can to protect them. But also, I feel like, I don't know, I think if we can withhold their engagement with social media and the risks that brings along with it, it's bound to help them. Like, there's no research evidence, but I'm sure as this media ban gets rolled out and we start looking at the statistics relative to online grooming, relative to bullying, we would be able to see a reduction in that. That's my prediction, is that we will see a reduction in some of those risks that are occurring to children right now.
Mhm. Do you believe media literacy education, because that's the one you always talking about,
Yes,
could be as effective as regulation in reducing harmful content?
I think media literacy education will be more effective. I think that if we need to teach kids to recognise risk and to be able to manage that risk. And that's going to work far better than any sort of regulation. But we need to put that at the forefront. So what we're currently doing at the moment is it is in the curriculum in Australia. So, children are supposed to be getting taught that, but we're not testing that. We're not monitoring how that's being taught. We're not monitoring what they're getting taught. So it's not put as it's not identified as valuable as what it should be. Like, it should be as important as maths and English, teaching kids protective behaviours in relation to recognising and responding to risks that are posed by social media.
So, still with banning of social media, by banning that under 16, do you believe or reckon that it will also reduce like cyberbullying, bullying pattern, online behavior, or
I think, like, I think it'll be, some kids that have been bullied online will probably embrace this social media ban and enjoy it, because it will protect them, because it lessens the opportunities for kids to bully one another. Now, it's not going to stop bullying, because there's other ways, there's other means that children can connect online, but the less opportunities that children have to engage in that media, in digital media, the more likely it is that they are going to be protected from perpetrators, from bullying, from inappropriate material.
so in your view, how should anti-bullying education evolve if, say, social media use becomes more restricted for young people?
So you're asking how bullying education should change if
In your view, how should anti-bullying education evolve if social media use becomes more restricted for young people?
I feel like, even though there's the social media ban for young people, I still think that they need that education, because even though it's restricted, there's still avenues where children can get bullied online, such as gaming. And, they can still get bullied via text. So we still need that education. We still need children to be able to recognise, report and respond to bullying behaviours or sexualised behaviours or sexual harassment, whatever it is that is occurring to them online, they still need to be educated about that, and that's key. That's very important, because with the social media ban, it's being put in place to protect kids whilst they mature, whilst their mind and their brain is developing, and they're more likely to be able to, engage with media more critically. It is there as a protective mechanism, but they're still, while they're still online, which they're going to be, we still need that media education, that critical literacy education, so that they can recognise and effectively respond to any sort of misdemeanour that might be occurring online, and report to parents or teachers or police, even if something like that's occurring.
Are there social, economic, or inclusion risks if only some children have regulated access to social media while others don't have?
I feel like that the research suggests that kids, I think there's around about 80% of children now from 8 years of age have access to a mobile phone. So whilst we have so many young children, with a mobile phone or an iPad or even computer, like there's access. There's very limited number of children who cannot access social media at the moment, whether it be through mobile phone, a tablet, or family computer, or computers at school. Like, there's access. So I don't feel like it's a socioeconomic thing. I think that all kids are at risk at the moment, and they will remain at risk because of the nature of the internet. It does give access to children by ill-intending people. So whilst we are trying to lessen that risk by introducing this social media ban, it's not necessarily it's not going to eliminate the risk. There is still going to be a risk for kids. So education is definitely the key there, and that needs to happen as soon as there's a device put into children's hands.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor Leslie Ann A., UniSA Education Futures. That's another episode of Part 8A podcast under redmancarry.com. Thank you so much for that.